All right. So, should we get going? Madhuri, you there? Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. We're trying usually to meet on Thursdays and Fridays, but we've decided instead to meet today because I think maybe, like many of you, we're all feeling really, really pounded by this current situation in Iran, but that's also really global. At the end of the day, it's not just concentrated in Iran. We're talking about a type of carnage that's getting worse and worse every single day. And we want to look at, of course, the situation itself, but also at the same time to think a little bit about the deep lies we're getting from media and from mainstream Western media, but also I don't know which other alternate medias are around. Very little. I think there's some interesting information trickling down from social media, but in general, it's been a sort of a very problematic stream of information coming in. And our title is On Media Gaslighting, Bombing Iran, Starving Gaza, Killing Children, and then the thing that we hate about it all, saving Muslim women, which is put once again, gives liberal Western people, especially feminists, gives them a lot of wind beneath their wings to go and kill people and be absolutely violent. So even in the 3 days that this has happened, things have escalated horribly. There are ground troops now in Lebanon. The US embassy was bombed in Riyadh. People in the UAE are sheltering. People in Qatar are also feeling pretty precarious, and there's been all kinds of stuff happening in Kuwait. The entire region, flights have been cancelled. It's one of the biggest flight cancellations and general, epic sort of drama around air travel in recent years, worse than one has ever seen in a long time. And in general, there is an extraordinary sense that nowhere is really safe. Yes, it might feel safe in Europe or the US or something, but it really feels out of bounds and things are just moving very fast. So I wanted to start with any of you. What have you seen with the media coverage?
Madhuri,
Oh,
you go.
Madhuri, you're muted.
Is this better?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Okay. No, I wanted to say, what have we seen from the media? That's just like such a loaded question. I think I just wanted to sort of pick up on what you said about the saving of Muslim women, and maybe we can start there because I saw some very, depressing or ominous meme. When women in Iran start revolting, what's next? Something like that. And we were having this conversation, Bhakti, where you said it's just shocking how every 10 years it is the same narrative used again and again and again and again, right? So you have the members of, the Iranian diaspora who are elite and who live here, who have all sort of really been thrilled by what has happened in Iran. And on social media, on my social media at least, they are rightfully getting called out for it. And there is this real weaponization of feminism. It's like you're either with us or against us. But now it's like you're either with Iranian women or you're against Iranian women. And like if you don't support the US's actions, then you are just anti-women, you're anti this, you're anti that. Meanwhile, what has been completely silenced by the media, and I've only seen like clips around of it circulating around social media, is Netanyahu and Benny Gantz going on television saying that they have been wanting to do this for the past 40 years. Oh, we've been wanting to do this for 40 years. Now we have our chance. Oh, we want to do this for 47 years and now we've had our chance. And there is absolutely no reportage on it. There is this entire feminist, white feminist, let's save them. And now the Iranian women crew is a part of these white feminists, saying like, how dare you tell us not to celebrate and we're going to dance, and nothing to say nothing of the 165 girls that were killed in by the US and by Israel. So it's all very weird. Again, it's like, what women are getting saved? Who is saving them? Why do we need to save them? And of course, Netanyahu and Benny Gantz are not even trying to peddle the old wine in the new bottle. They're very upfront by saying,
Totally.
we've actually been wanting to do this for 47 years. And I find it absolutely bizarre. And the number of headlines that or opinion columns or whatever, specifically from the New York Times, specifically from David Brooks, that have come out where it's like, well, he must be deposed. He must have gone. This is good. This is fantastic what has happened. Now Iran can have their revolution. It had to happen. He was so, he was, like it was terrible. Morality police, yada, blada, blue, blue. And it has just been alarming that this attack, this illegal war, is not being referred to as illegal, and it is not contextualized. And it's almost like there's the saving of the women, and then there's the absolutely debunked claim that Iran has these long range missiles that will, hit US, that can hit US, the whole US homeland, and absolutely they don't. It's the same thing. So Bhakti, when you pointed it out, it is just the Iraq War 2.0. And there is no interest on the part of the media to cover that, or the real motivations for the war, or the intense opposition to this illegal war that is happening here in the US, sure, but around the world. There is this opposition. There's mass protests in India and Pakistan. There is not a whiff from the liberal media about this. So that's just kind of where these are the top level thoughts on my head that I just wanted to download in response.
Of course.
But if like they're telling you that they've been wanting to do this for 47 years, just leave the women out of it.
Yeah. I think there are two things. I think one, I want to quote an Iranian professor, Fawd Izadi, who went on a television program, I think made the most important comment that I have heard. Also understand that Iranians have not had internet access, so we haven't heard from Iranians themselves the last, I think, almost more than 48 hours. Fawd Izadi says that this is the Epstein class. They either know how to rape young girls or bomb them. And I think that is absolute the important analysis of what it means to be the Epstein class. It ties back with what Madhuri very eloquently talked about, the saving of the women. They don't want to save women. They either want to rape and kill them, or they want to bomb them. These are the only two things that they do. And the second thing that I want to see is that I think 168 children have died since the attack in Minab. That is now 6 times more than the children who died on October 7th. And I hate bringing up the parallels, but that idea that these were young girls who were killed is just completely, they've just moved on, right? They've just moved on. And what I really hated in two separate instances, I think one was Reuters, I think another was BBC. They say that the attack happened in Minab and very quickly say, oh, by the way, there is a Revolutionary Guard base just nearby. Are you defending the attack of young school girls by saying that, follow it very quickly by that? And I think these are two things that we have to think about. But also, I think one of the other things that is lacking is the deeply Eurocentric Western vision of Iran that cannot look beyond the revolution. It has no understanding of the country, no understanding of the history, no grasp of how they see themselves, no understanding of where they come politically, where Shia Muslims, both as Iranians, as people who are living post-revolution under a government, and there's a lot that's happening on the ground, and there are no right or wrong answers, and yet the refusal to engage with Iranians as people who can hold multiple ideas and thoughts, cry for Palestine, be disgruntled with their government, at the same time deny an American Israeli led bombing. I think that is completely absent in the Western analysis.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely true what both of you are saying. And now the death toll is official death toll. As always, it's always more. We know it's always more. It's like over 750 or something like that in Iran. I mean, it's preposterous. It's 48 hours. And of course, we're saying the same things, just with a little extra twist of the knife, which is we are back to this notion that we have become so familiar with in Gaza genocide is the hospitals and children. Bombing hospitals and children, because there were the schoolgirls in Minab, and then there was also a little park or square or something where there were kids in Tehran that also died. So this is the new warfare, right? It's like go straight for the jugular, decapacitate the country, and make sure just to take this kind of, there's a sort of genocidal impulse in it. It's always sort of children related, hospital related, anti-healing, like there's no room for anybody to be wounded and stuff like that. And it's kind of astonishing. I know Al Jazeera has been criticized for putting up a lot of liberal commentators on there, and of course they are Qatari, and they can't go as left as maybe we want, but the truth is, at least the one thing that they do is show images. So if I'm watching, at least they show the rubble. If you watch just basic CNN. I turned on CNN International. I don't know why, but just to see if there's any shift in discourse. And what I found was a toxic white male grilling down somebody within the Iranian ministry, and just going crazy, thinking he's taking this hardline questioning approach. But his questions were so pathetic, and there was, this is all they can do, is he was taking him to task, and there was no interest in any human aspect of it at all. So I don't know why the reporters want to take on this particular role, and it's really absolutely despairing. And of course, today the New York Times, no, it was yesterday, they ran a whole thing on the legality or the illegality of the killing of Ayatollah Khamenei, and it's like, oh, good, murder is up for debate. That's nice.
Yeah.
Let's debate killing. Let's debate an assassination.
Yeah.
It's just everything is illegal, and they evoke illegal. They US, Israel, they evoke this is illegal, that is illegal. Meanwhile, they have made sure that the word means nothing, and
Right.
it is never going to mean anything when the Western people say it.
Yeah. I was thinking when you was talking about this genocidal intent. Um, sorry, am I echoing a lot? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So when you were saying about genocidal intent, I remembered the Israeli bombing of the sperm bank, in Gaza, and I feel like um, there are so many. I don't even know how to phrase it without sounding incredibly crude, but uh, forms of annihilation that have been tried and tested, with Gaza as the sort of ground zero for that kind of testing. And um, when October 7th happened, there were a lot of people, especially on the left, so many Palestinians who knew what was going to happen, and they were sort of just completely, completely sidelined. And we saw what has happened. That genocide obviously continues, and in the meanwhile, Israel has closed the borders to Gaza as well. And people have been saying that this is going to become the sort of template for how these genocidal wars are conducted around the world. And that is exactly what is happening. Yet you see this ridiculous elite diaspora cheering, and then, everyone putting out these videos like it's possible to feel two things at once. It's possible to be really happy that,
Yet it's not.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, but what about your grandmother and like all of the other women who are dying there? It's just it's really unfathomable to me. So I agree with you that this idea of illegal means nothing, right? It's just absolutely a nonsensical term. I also wanted to offer a very choice headline, or rather a tweet, from The Atlantic, which was published yesterday. And the tweet is: Benjamin Netanyahu's long career was built on conflict avoidance. Then October 7th transformed and radicalized him. Okay?
Oh,
So this is the kind of stuff on conflict avoidance. Like, do they think that all of us share, the whole world shares one brain cell? Like, it's just like, what is this? This is absolutely happening. And the headline is: The Israel of October 6th is never coming back. And, it's like, again, somehow this is Hamas and it's Hezbollah. And I really want to talk about that too, because it's like, now as Israel continues its crazy offensive, specifically in Lebanon, it's true that Hezbollah attacked, Israel, in violation of the ceasefire. But again, something that Western media will not report is that as Israel starts to carpet bomb, villages in southern Lebanon and completely decimate and bomb populated areas in Beirut, um, Israel has violated that ceasefire more than 10,000 times. I think that ceasefire has been violated 15,000 times by Israel. And it's the one-time violation by Hezbollah, right? And so somehow, again, we're back at like Hezbollah and Hamas. And, like, we're back at this like terrorist narrative. And, I just push it down our throats. And I'm really, sometimes I just feel like what is happening? How is this happening, but there is just so much evidence to the contrary. There's so much evidence. There's 3 years worth of evidence to the contrary. And this is where we are, with the US fighting Israel's war and finding themselves completely, out of their depth. And sorry. So,
Just want to say that Benjamin Netanyahu is a warmonger. And I think everybody knows the instance where, when he was a student at MIT, or he was in MIT, he was asked to debate Edward Said, and he said, "I'm not going to, because this man might try and kill me." And he also writes this horrible book called Fighting Terrorism in the 90s, where he literally laid out the playbook of what is playing out right now. He talks about going after not just Palestine, but going after Jordan and Lebanon and Syria. He talks about destroying Iran. He talks about going after Turkey. This man gave his blueprint of what he wants to do to the world, which is annihilate the world and remake it in the vision of Zionist supremacy. And that book exists. It's called Fighting Terrorism. It came out in the 90s. So this man is no.
yeah.
I mean, I can't believe we are, just as we are debating if killing is good, I can't believe we are actually saying this about him. But also, I think another thing to do is that another Israeli official just did a press conference 48 hours ago where he said that Turkey is the new Iran. So they're saying that now that Iran is done, it's Turkey. And I'm just like, Turkey is part of NATO. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I mean, so for them, this is really not a matter of life and death. This is Zionist settler colonial supremacy and murder and annihilation fantasy. And I think that is really where we are. And the refusal to ask the bare minimum questions to the Americans and the Israelis and the Europeans, and not to mention, I think the French president has now said that he's rallying up all of the nuclear weapons in defense. The British now offering up Cyprus as a base. This is the kind of annihilatory, violent colonialism that is back. The only difference is the stories we've read in textbooks that didn't have live stream. Now, actually, it's happening. It's just playing out in front of us.
Yeah. Absolutely. My God. I think there is a lot of us, especially of my generation, people in their 40s and so on, who are falling back on all the thinking, everything we kind of went into shock as it occurred, and the march to war for Iraq and Afghanistan, and in Iraq, they couldn't pretend they had to save the women, but they were going to save them from the great dictator Saddam Hussein and save the Western world from weapons of mass destruction. But tagged along with it was always Afghanistan, and to save those women from the Taliban, right? And in that post 9/11 era, of course, there was no immediate reason to start war with Iran, but man, the real bloodthirst was there, and it was part of the axis of evil. And there's such a deep history of this aggression and absolute hatred towards Iran and what it means and how it's led and the stuff that comes out of it. And of course, it's bolstered just the way the Hindu fascist movement is bolstered by the diaspora and the Venezuela and Cuba as well. It's bolstered by a diaspora that are 100%, pro MAGA and supporting this. So as soon as you have the media bring on a diaspora person and say, listen to the Iranians, suddenly now you care about identity politics. You couldn't bring on one Palestinian for the last 3 years. But now you're like, listen to Iranians, let them speak, let Iranian women speak. And, that is when you have to get suspicious immediately, because this is the classic sign that something is wrong. Like, you're going to get a commentator that is just going to toe the state lines. And the landscape is so depraved right now with Reza Pahlavi, who has been nuts, declaring he's just so thirsty, A, for attention, B, to be seated on this throne. And what makes me laugh is the labyrinthine structure of Iranian political system. Yes, Khamenei is dead. It's a huge loss. Lots of people are happy, but lots of people are mourning. And but not anybody has the delusion that there is some kind of a power vacuum, because the way the political system works is that it's extremely atomized, and it's totally it's just a very complex political system. And I think, Suchitra, you know a little bit about it, so you should say. But the truth being, it just is laughable to see American media trumping up Reza Pahlavi and acting like they can actually have regime change. It's like, how about regime change back in the US, guys? Let's get that going. But no, God forbid, somebody has to bomb them to get Trump out of office. I don't know, is that the way? But Suchitra, you were saying when we spoke.
Yeah. I think one of the things to understand, I think this again goes back to the idea that we are so propagandized about Iran that we cannot look at Iran as, no matter how flawed, it is an exceptionally well functioning government. This is not to say that it is brutal or that it oppresses or its own people. No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that this is an exceptionally well calibrated system, calibrated to survive assassinations. One of the things when you start studying Iran, you understand is that they have something called Article 111 of the Constitution that actually lays out a succession plan. It very clearly says what is going to happen. There's a provisional council, there is a council, and constitutional provision that lays out a succession plan. And often the way the system is built is that they are built to survive annihilation. Another thing, when you speak and listen to Iranian diplomats or officials, there are two things that they will speak. The ones that do come to the US or Europe, the couple of things that they will keep saying over and over again. One, they will say that, Persia is an empire. We are not a country. America has to engage with us as an empire. So that's one of the things that they will open their things with. But the second thing that they will say is that they are committed to the survival of the revolution. And that is not something that they say as a propaganda or a rhetoric, but that is something that they have built in through the structures. No matter how flawed these men are or oppressive, the structure is built to last. And that's why even now, what you're really seeing is that the US accepted. For also, a second thing to understand is that in the early 80s and 90s, political scientist, American political scientist, came with something called the scud analysis, or this analysis of the decapitation of leadership, which they believed, which again they modeled on their own systems, is that if you take out that one charismatic leader, everything will fall apart. And that's what you really saw with the proliferation of assassinations of various people across the world post decolonization, whether it is Patrice Lumumba to Che Guevara to what happened in Iraq, what happens with Palestinians. And they often mistakenly believe that once you take them out, it's going to survive, and it is not. And the other thing that the Iranians have done, and again, there's something I'm repeating the commentary of, again, Fawd Izadi. He says that there's a generation of Iranians who really did not know what happened during the revolution, who really did not know what American empire did to them. Now, American bombing has proven to them what that violence can look like. And the fact that the Khamenei, 86 years old, knew they were going to come for him, and he, was there waiting for them to kill him, also meant that they have cemented the myth of a martyr that he is. And all of these things actually go on to bolster the system as against break it down. And again, this is not to say that the people should, of course, people should be protesting. They should protest against the governments. They should protest against oppression. They should demand for things. But I think the analysis of the government structures themselves, Article 111 of the Iranian Constitution entrenches this within the political parties. And they will continue. It is not going to be a survival crisis. They have that. They've been planning for this for years.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Sorry, somebody has killed you. Maybe. Yeah. Who is that? Is it me? Okay, go ahead, Madhuri. You can comment. Oh,
No, Suchitra, I just wanted to say that's really it's really, really meaningful to hear that kind of nuance. And you're totally right. And I wanted to point out someone in the comments who said that the government is calibrated to overcome colonization and sanctions. And this is totally right, because even, it's not well, the colonization of Iran, the dreams of whatever, entirely profiting off their oil far precede the revolution. So it's not like this is, something new. And the Americans have come up with this incredible thesis. And I think what time and again Americans do not understand is what you say often, which is it's not about the man or the woman or whatever, it's about the movement. And they never seem to understand popular movements and what happens when the messiah, so to speak, is taken out. Nothing. The movement absolutely continues. And time and again, people seem to think that, well, yes, Iran, it was, terrible for women at this time, and all that kind of thing. But there is a sort of the Khomeini was someone to Shia Muslims around the world. So to just extricate that part of his leadership or who he is from, and just to sort of like split him and be like, oh, as a cleric controlled by the clerics, this is who he was, but he absolutely means nothing else and he must go, and that'll be really good for the world, is such a dehumanizing and terrible assessment of another movement, which is faith-based movements. So time and again, Americans could stand to receive lessons on movements and on popular movements and popular resistance, and they simply do not do it. And this is really exemplified by these protests in India and these protests in Pakistan, where 20 people have died, when they stormed the consulate, and there's all this mourning. And that's not something that that America or American leaders seem to understand at all. That this is not, they may try to peddle the old wine in the new bottle again, millions and millions and millions of times, but these governments, these people, they mean something to people. Like British Petroleum was established in Iran and profited off. So, like they know what they're doing. And then, the CIA has been involved in Iran and in its profits forever. So it's just kind of ridiculous that they think that they can come in and, just be like, oh, this was a terrible man, let's just get him. And then imagine that it was just going to just magically change overnight. It's like this idea that they tried to do with Maduro, right? Just vanish him, get the oil, that's it, done. We're just done. Finished. We've solved the problem for ourselves.
Yeah. No, and I want to add to that this notion of decapitating the head of state and thus decapitating the state itself, destabilization. I mean, these were very strategic things meant to destabilize countries during the Cold War, and they did what they were trying to do, which is you put figureheads that were obedient to the empire, and the state was fundamentally destabilized, so you could continue to loot it, right? And that's the history of the Cold War. Some strange and warped logic version of that as it goes on now, where we live in an era of nation states, and that those logics of the Cold War don't exactly work in that same way, has somehow not sunk in. So we have these old tools, but no refreshing, no rebooting of what applies and what doesn't. And to that same old idea, I want to add is that, and this is where leftists and progressives also suck as much as the right wing, is absolute zero ability to understand that people are religious, and that people are religious and they follow their religious leaders, even if they know that this religious leader is doing something bad. And even someone like Franz Fanon, that was always one of my big critiques of him, not understanding the role of Islam within sort of the Algerian struggle for independence and things like that, and not grasping the kind of deep relationships people have with their faith and religion, as you were saying. Meanwhile, we're now in an age, and we've always been, I guess, in that age where it's very normalized to speak in Christian supremacy terms. And now it's become normalized to speak in Jewish supremacy terms. The presidents of the US are always evoking God and all this stuff. And then there is this vague notion that there is separation between the church and state. And we know that it is not true, and, and so that is kind of inbuilt into the system, this religiosity, this Christianness that is seen as normal, that is seen as universal, that's seen as just cultural, not really religious. And of course, Trump and MAGA people are very open about their Christianity. Trump tries, it's very clear he doesn't understand religion, but even he has to spout that language. But the new thing on the block is a sort of Jewishness. And, I want to evoke something that Muhammad al-Kurd writes about, which is that Palestinians and progressives who care about Palestine are constantly trying to be respectful of the idea that we cannot equate Judaism with Zionism. But I'm sorry, it's like, how careful can we be when they are doing the equating themselves? And now that language has permeated the vocabulary. And I read a really terrifying tweet that had gone viral, which was about the amount of Muslims there are in the world, which automatically means that they are a threat. And meanwhile, there's only one-fourth that amount of Jews. So you see how it is? That's why we need to do this. And the other alarming thing that I read in sync with that connects with that, once upon a time, you could find out what's going on in Palestine and you would never know from American, but there would be an Israeli left that actually understood what was happening on the ground. It's over now. And Mondo Wise today just published this poll, this thing about a new Israeli poll, that young Jewish voters are at the moment are the most right-wing, fanatically religious, and pro-genocide in Israeli history. We've suspected this because the genocide has gone on long enough, and now we know. And it was featured on Israel's Channel 12, and it spoke about how their outlook was so much different from the older voters. And I want to end my comment, because I'm going on and on, with one thing which I know there is a lot of enthusiasm for the young, and the young and the young. The young will save us. And I'm always on the other side of it, where I'm like really worried about the young in the US and the young MAGA and the young, this whole thing. I mean, there's something going on that we that is religious, that is white supremacist, that is Zionist, that we don't have a handle on. And I think I don't have a handle on it myself, but I feel the terrain has shifted,
I would add to that patriarchal as the really sort of intense magnification, and we are really, I mean, some part of me is like, well, this is what happens when you live in an era of global fascism. Like, this is what it means to live in an era of global fascism. You have your groups of people that have lived through it, that have studied it, that are old enough to remember history, young enough to know this, whatever. Some I feel with you there, kind of caught in the middle. Not too far away from previous fascist regimes, but perhaps experiencing it for the first time on my own as an adult. And then you have people who are really coming of age in this kind of world. And I'm not saying this to give them a pass, but it really sucks to be young right now. It sucks. There is just crisis upon crisis, economic crises, no jobs, living with your parents, loneliness, mental health crisis. It's really, really difficult. And there is absolutely no support systems in place for these kinds of young people who are coming out in droves, overqualified, underemployed. All of the strides that we have made in in whatever, annihilating the patriarchy, please, but some feminist strides they all feel like we're experiencing the rebound from half measures, right? The reason that the three of us, that everybody has a problem with these feminist measures, where it's like men and women are equal. So it's like, well, men are imperialists, and so I want to also be an imperialist with them, or I also want to drop bombs as a woman. That is, we're seeing the problem with that kind of a situation. And, they also came of age during COVID, which I think is really, really bad. So I have empathy for them. And I think that perhaps a lot of them do feel like that's why populism is on the rise. But I feel like that kind of idea of like, it's not your fault, it's somebody else's fault, becomes so easy to accept in this moment. So I think that the left really, really needs to start thinking about rehabilitating, about welcoming, about assisting this like crisis of youth that is happening. And I feel the left has also abdicated them. They have just completely. I had a moment of I want to say like some kind of optimism when we saw the movement for the election of Zoran Mamdani in New York that was led entirely by young people, but it requires that kind of like bringing them together. And who do we have on the left who are our leaders here in the US? AOC. I mean, come on, come on. Of course, there's Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. Yes, yes, yes. But at the end of the day, we cannot, on the left, abdicate our young. Like, we absolutely cannot. It is a terrible time to be young. It is extremely difficult. It's extremely precarious in many, 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 many ways. And I'm not surprised that this has happened, and it saddens me. But that's where sort of I want to, end it.
Yeah, I wanna hear Suchitra. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I don't know. I think I kind of slightly, I mean, I agree with Madhuri saying, but I'm also saying that the week after I started undergrad, 9/11 happened. Since then, we went through the invasion of Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, destruction of Syria. 2008, soon after you graduate, and then the financial crisis. So I think that the young, and I'm sure the generation that came before me had its own list of things that they came of age. The young are always in some kind of crisis, and I think what is changed between that and now, I think Occupy was a good moment to see the disenfranchisement, and it's a realization that whiteness is no longer going to give you the privileges, and I think that is the discontent. I think that is the one more layer that kind of adds into it, is that whiteness at one point in time guaranteed certain kind of bare minimum access to systems and privileges, and I think that went away. And the reason for the return of this kind of this religious, I don't know if it's religion. See, I don't know if it's so much as religion or wanting to belong to a community, right? Like we've been talking about the MAGA aesthetic. Like, what is the MAGA aesthetic? What is the trad wife aesthetic? What is the incel aesthetic? I'm just wondering how much of this is religion, and how much of this is just the realization of vast majority of young people who are white or white presenting, that whiteness no longer guarantees some kind of hope for them. Today, there is nothing for them. There's nothing. There's the future is bleaker. The first time, I think the Gallup poll said that the first time Americans will do worse than their parents. It was supposed to be a millennial generation, but it's actually not the millennial generation. It is a Gen Z that is going to do worse. And I think it's also all of that. And put into that a sense of deep xenophobia, deep anti-immigrant, and it's racism, and it's just all of these threads of ugliness that just is amplified. And I don't know what it means to bring those young people together. I really don't know. As you said, I don't know how we build a system in which those grievances are heard. And then the moment I say grievances are heard, my first response is, yeah, but you've had power for so long. Like, what grievance am I now addressing? So I'm a bit more conflicted about the young and about the what more do we need to give you in order for you to not, yeah.
I think I think there's a level at which we can have that conversation about material issues, and I can still come out with philosophical despair that we are looking at young people right now, or whatever, a generation, not young, not just young, people right now that are completely disaffected, completely detached from a human desire to stop genocide. Okay, and this is a problem for me. We are talking about capitalist consumption and individual pleasure as an impulse that has gone so awry that uh, uh, that you don't care that babies are being crushed to death. You really, it's really that bad for you. You don't have time to care for that. So I think, to me, uh, yeah, yes, I agree. There are lots of material problems we can deal with and all that. There are little spurts of hope here and there. But in general, we are looking at a level of detachment and disinterest in baseline humanity that bothers me just beyond deeply. And I'm sorry, we can sit here and we can eviscerate media propaganda and mainstream media and liberal media. But what are young people looking at? They're looking at social media, you know
So
young
I
people
did
are
want
looking at social media, and they are also engaging with yeah, they are seeing actually some of the stuff that like the oldies are not seeing. So yes. And I don't know if you were going to say this, but I want to talk about Gaza and what's going on right now.
No, I wasn't going to say Gaza. To your point, I just wanted to add that social media is the tool that has, you know, by the time it could have been used in liberation of Palestinians who were able to share their stories and live stream the genocide, it had already been wielded, I think, by states and by the media to wear people down with images of people dying and rockets being hit here and babies maimed there and da 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 da. Da. And the truth is, you know, one, no matter what their age is, one cannot help but be completely worn down and numbed by this onslaught. And I don't know, I just don't know what it would have been like to be a person coming of age, experiencing puberty in a time of social isolation and over dependence on social media as the only form of like getting your news or communicating or whatever it is, feeling connected to the world, to only be pushed further into your isolation and be bombarded and desensitized and desensitized and desensitized, all in a way that seems to me to be very calculated to bring about what one of our writers at the Polis Project and several psychologists have referred to as numb and obedient psyche. So for me, it's easy again to say, yes, yeah, how dare you, but at the same time, like they have been acted on and they really have come of age at a really bad, bad, bad time. So I do have some empathy, and I do understand that as somebody who also just has to switch off, like the 10th image of a baby dying or a hand coming out of a rubble, like I cannot take it. I feel horrible afterwards, and part of me just doesn't feel anything. And I'm sure there are many people who are in the same boat. And I wish that we felt not rabidly like we wanted to kill babies. That's a very different conversation, what you started the conversation with. But I
Yeah.
must say that the
I'm
numbing,
talking about the pro
yeah,
people
but
who
the
are for
numbing
it.
and the inability to do anything and to feel like, okay, like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's too much now for us.
I think it's a slightly different conversation than what I was saying, which is that we have a very energized youth who are
Yeah,
for
absolutely,
certain things,
absolutely. No,
and
but
energized youth that want certain things to happen. And I think the youth conversation is a bigger and a deeper
yeah,
conversation. But mine was spurred by this Israeli poll,
yeah.
and in general, seeing the amount of quite younger people who are part of MAGA. I'm sorry, they just are. And I just wanted to bring us back to how all roads lead to Gaza, and how every little thing, like the butterfly effect or whatever, every little thing that happens in the world has adverse, utterly devastating effects in Palestine, in Gaza, and in West Bank. Now, Netanyahu and Trump have achieved, with sleight of hand, bombing Iran, which immediately has led them to close Rafah, close the borders, and immediately do even the minuscule amount of aid trucks that were getting in now will not be getting in again. And they're already preparing for starvation again. And then the West Bank is out of control. And of course, to bring back in my conversation on religion, of course, all of this has to happen during the holy month of Ramadan, where people are, um, all they desire is peace and rest, and some kind of space to just, to be with their faith, to be with their family. But no, it's a very targeted, scheduled thing, that they have to close down the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, people who are praying can't go there. It's awful. It's awful. Sorry, Suchitra, go ahead.
No, I think what really, really just bothers me is just the disappearance of Gaza from the news, right? Like we just don't, and children are still being killed. And also it is the holy month of Ramadan, and then to see people struggle. And another thing that we've noticed is that um, the number of writers from Gaza who would pitch us and write to us is just gone quiet. There's a point in which we would have writers writing to us at least 3 or 4 times a week and say, "Hey, we have this story, we have that story. Can we pitch you?" It's been silence for the last almost 3 weeks now, and there is this sense that we've now moved on. It's as if we have moved on from this site of annihilation to another one, for another one. But also, I think what is important to note um, is what is happening to the pro-Palestinian protests in the US itself, and I'm having some very, very, very mixed feelings about it. I'm not able to articulate it well. There was a recent coverage of Muslim creatives that Guardian did, which had people like Mahmoud Khalil being photographed and part of it. And I'm just like, are we on that cusp of that moment where a raw movement is being um, you know appropriated? And this is not a critique of any of these remarkable people who are on the front line speaking, advocating, but I'm worried that the pro-Palestinian movement that was so re-energizing for me to see those students put there. I think that I feel like is come to this moment where we're not hearing enough. We have, I know that Zoran Mamdani called and got one of the Columbia students from Azerbaijan released, but Leka Kordia is still another political prisoner who was arrested in a Columbia protest, still remains incarcerated. There is still a few posts, a few reporting from alternative media, but her story is now disappeared. We have people like Badr Khan Suri, who is out, but now left with, if I'm not mistaken, a few $100,000 in legal debt. All of that is happening, and my fear is that we don't hear Palestine enough. And the atrocities keep happening. And for me, it's always a question of how do we go back and center Palestine? And that is becoming harder. It's becoming harder and harder.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, you're totally, absolutely right. Yeah, it's either completely gone. Yeah, it's just gone. And it's true, that they've killed 260 journalists. So even the news feed is kind of thinned out, just from all the journalists that have been deliberately targeted and killed off. And I don't know how this shakes out. I think I think saving Muslim women is at the moral heart of Christian saviorism and Christian progressive saviorism, Christian humanitarianism, white humanitarianism. But there is a new kind of bloodthirst, or whatever you want to call it, this kind of raw energy that's interested in violence, that even the mobilization we saw at that time around Taliban and stuff like that, nobody cares to do it that much either. It's not even all that much. Somewhere people will be piping up and saying, yeah, what about the women and stuff like that. But one doesn't seem to care. I don't know, do any of you have thoughts on how this shapes up? Does my sense is that, of course, Netanyahu wants this war. Israel wants this war. A majority of the Israel are completely invested, and they've already lost 9 people, or 10 people have been killed, and they are sheltering and they are in war mode. But they want this. That's the popular opinion from what I hear. In the US, however, Trump wanted some deliberate targeted attacks, and now he's being dragged into something that even he seems to not have a handle over. And he just said today, or was it yesterday, I don't even know, he said 4 American soldiers have died, and there's going to be a lot more, and we have to just be ready. I'm not the kind of president who is going to say no boots on the ground. I'm going to say we're going to wait and see. And even I can sense his tentative. I can see him ramping up for, like, he doesn't know what's going on. So how do you think it shakes out? Any thoughts?
I have a utopian dream. I don't know if this will happen, but I think this is like an amazing moment for utopian dream. I think there is a cost of living crisis in the United States. Every American, I think vast majority of Americans are struggling. And I think this should be the moment when we mobilize and really push. And the people who are most suffering are Trump's own base. And I think it's the cost. And I think really what we need is to focus on the fact that American imperialism eventually means that you have starving children in the United States. We have maternal mortality rates that are like so bad. That is just like, I can't begin to. We don't have good schools. We don't have good medical facilities. We don't have good things. So my radical utopian dream would be that we use this moment to really hammer in on the cost of living crisis, the fact that it's difficult, and that we are spending our money bombing children when we do not have the kind of bare minimum access to things. How it will play out, I have a feeling that the Iranians will cause more harm in the short term. I think right now, vast majority of the resources are used to block the Iranian missiles that are coming in, which are like really old, cheap missiles, which they know are going to be blocked. But the longer they keep doing it, the cost of defending it is going to be high. So one thing the Iranians have succeeded in is creating a huge cost for the Trump presidency. Now, will the Democrats and others use this moment to extract something because of this cost? I don't know. I wish they did. So I don't know how it will play out, but this would be this is a really ripe moment to really push on the cost of living crisis. The oil barrel is now $3 a barrel. So that's really going to hit people really badly.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to say to that, I think that the economic argument is seeming to resonate quite a bit. I don't know how that will galvanize MAGA voters, if we're going to see them on the streets leading the protests against the Iran war. I don't know. I do think that there is a very real difference between the White House and the Pentagon, and numerous reports have shown us that there's not a clear divide. There's not a meeting of minds between the two. The Pentagon seems to be really worried about about America's diminishing stockpiles, and I think that this is a situation in which the U.S. is out of its depth. It's completely out of its depth. So we are going to have to back off. And as for your comment about the cost of living crisis at home and the Democrats, well, I don't know how recent this clip was, but I saw a clip of Hillary Clinton speaking at some conference that was circulating where she says, um, do you know that my husband and Barack Obama deported so many more illegals without killing a single American citizen? And the whole crowd, like people start to clap and cheer. So I don't know. What are we expecting from the Democrats? I can't. Unfortunately, I don't know if I share like that optimism. I think that there has to be some kind of complete overhaul. I do think something incredible can happen, but I think that it would have to be, like a much more progressive movement that really takes root, that is willing to push left as far left as the right has been pushing right. Then I think that we are going to, be in good. We'll be in for a better future. I also want to add that in the news that has become buried in relation to women and children, and the treatment of immigrant women and children here, is a Guardian report that has come out, which talks about how the US is moving pregnant immigrant girls to detention centers and ICE detention centers in Texas to avoid providing abortions. And in these detention centers are girls as young as 13 who are pregnant. More than half of them are pregnant by rape. Texas has absolutely no allowance for abortion in these situations. These are unaccompanied minors. They are at extremely high risk of trafficking. Their reproductive health situation in these detention centers is absolutely abysmal. So I think it is time that we really start to turn our gaze back inwards. In addition to Gaza being out of the news, what the other thing that has gone out of the news completely is ICE. The other thing, like no one is talking about ICE, no one is talking about these detention centers that they're building, no one is talking about these pregnant children that they are abusing. There is nothing more to be heard about the Epstein files and those young girls and those young children. It's all completely disappeared. So anything that requires a movement here will have to again link all these movements together, and
Yeah,
just
that's
don't count on the Dems.
beautiful utopian ideas. I still vote for regime change in Israel and US done by violent means. No, anyway, no, it's a particularly pessimistic moment. I'm also like enraged with this Bahrain and UAE and Kuwait and Qatar and how painfully useless they are and how lonely it is to be Palestine is what it reminds me, because Palestine is not fortified the way Iran is. And I think that's good and that's bad, of course. Bad because we are looking at ongoing carnage, because now they have, invoked the wrath of the Iranians, and Iranians have been preparing for this for years and years. Meanwhile, I don't know what the Americans have been preparing for, and I don't know what the Israelis want, what their end game is, also. So yeah. Anyway, it's just it's hard to see the isolation also at some level. I don't know if other states are joining in. Right now it's just Hezbollah on the Iran side of things, at least. But yeah, go ahead. Suchitra, speak.
I think also Yemen. I think there's a small Yemeni drone that did make it way into Haifa and hit it. I know. I know. I mean, for me, anything Yemen does is like, I'm like, you're such a small beleaguered country, but man, like they were like, you know what, we are going to attack you, even if it's a small drone that makes it through, and it made it through Haifa, and it hit a target in Haifa. So I was just like, okay, it's all good.
We're all drawn into the theater of war. I think Suchitra to mute every time I have to speak. So, Chitra, you have to fix your audio for future live streams. No, I think we're out of time. And yeah, I think we keep following what goes on. We dream of better media coverage, but I don't think this dream is going to come true in the foreseeable few weeks. And I think if people want to, I think if people want to turn to slightly better sources, I think they can be found, but you have to look for it. And please unsubscribe from the warmongering New York Times, the warmongering Atlantic, the warmongering Washington Post, the warmongering Financial Times, the warmongering Wall Street Journal. It's enough. What is it people want? You're upset, but then you don't want to unsubscribe. So please start there. Cleanse your mind. Detox. Thanks, both. All right. Goodbye. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and hopefully see you again soon. Bye.